creek poem installation is laid out like that on the ground is that you know Strawberry Creek runs under this park. Years ago, we used to lower a microphone. We used to take the manhole cover off, and we used to tie a hammer to a microphone and lower it down into the water so that we could hear, just above the water, so that we could hear the creek talk. So it's there under our feet. Now, opening our festival today, kicking it off, we're really honored to have with us Aya de León. I'm just really excited that she's here. And she teaches creative writing at UC Berkeley. She's the acquiring editor for Fighting Chance Books, the new climate justice fiction imprint, and at She Writes Press. And she's been talking a lot and writing a lot about climate fiction based on what we're facing, the climate emergency. And it's amazing stuff. It's entertaining, it's beautiful, exciting writing, and it's just great. I just want to say she's also the creative director of Black Literature versus the Climate Emergency. She's the creative director of it. It's a one-day virtual conference to celebrate the power of Afro-diasporic fiction, nonfiction, and poetry and spoken word that addresses the climate emergency. So for her, Afrofuturism, and for all of us, Afrofuturism includes Black people joining the climate movement to save the future, which I find really exciting. And so I'm very, very happy to have her here today. Aya de León.
People gonna rise like the water, gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter saying, keep it in the ground. People gonna rise like the water, gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter saying, keep it in the ground. Ashe, good morning, everyone. We're here because we know that we need to keep these fossil fuels in the ground where they belong so we can calm down the climate crisis. It is such a joy and a delight to be here. Thank you so much, everyone, for all the folks who have supported the Watershed Poetry Festival all these years. Thank you to Poetry Flash. Thank you to Joyce, Richard, all the poets who have graced this space. Thank you to the Creek. Thank you to all our relations. And so folks know me, many folks know me as a poet. I was a poet, spoken word artist for many years. And before that, I was always an activist, and some folks may remember way back in the day, the Livermore Action Group. I was a teen anti-nuclear activist here in Berkeley. And, you know, at that time was really politicized about the environment, and have held that in my heart since then, but also as a Black Puerto Rican person, you know, was always trying to figure out the balance between working around the environment and also working around issues of racial justice. And so for me, racial justice and feminist organizing was more front and center for me for many years, for many good reasons. But in 2017, when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, the climate crisis came home to me. Puerto Rico is the homeland of my mom's side of the family, and that particular toxic intersection of the climate crisis and colonization helped me to feel that everything was all connected: racial justice, gender justice, the environment, into this space of climate justice. And at the time, I had become a novelist, and I had a feminist heist series. I believe, for me, in writing novels that are very accessible to the masses, a little bit trashy, very dramatic, with heavy, heavy political content, about wealth redistribution, fighting capitalism in all these different kinds of ways. And after the hurricane hit, I thought, okay, I need to write about this. I need to write about the hurricane. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. But I was writing this feminist heist series about these women in New York City who were robbing corrupt corporate CEOs who were involved in a sex trafficking scandal. And I had 3 books, and so I decided to figure out how to write the 4th about the hurricane. So out of that came this book, Side Chick Nation, which was the first novel published about Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. And it was first because I was already under contract to write a book. And I decided to shift my topic to writing about the hurricane. And it's called Side Chick Nation because the protagonist, Dulce Garcia, is a young woman in her late teens, early 20s, who is recovering from being sexually exploited commercially. She was pimped, and she has been exploited in a way that's really metaphorically parallel to the way that the island of Puerto Rico has been exploited as a colony of the U.S. And it's sort of the side chick mistress colony of the United States, and has been mistreated and exploited in many ways. So that's what this book is about. For anyone who is listening to Flashpoints, I read a little bit of the prologue on the air on Wednesday, and so I'm going to read the full prologue. And what you need to know is that Dulce is, at the start of Hurricane Maria, is in Puerto Rico. She is squatting in a storage space, and she thinks that she'll just wait out the hurricane in this storage space. She's anxious, and to manage her anxiety, she has used some alcohol and marijuana. And it is the first of many questionable decisions she makes in this very dangerous time. Water flooded the storage space as Dulce slept. It seeped through the metal slats in the pull-down door. It pooled on the concrete floor. It rose around the mattress where Dulce was sleeping, although she was not exactly sleeping, more like in a stupor or a spell from the cocktail of rum and marijuana. It dulled her hearing so she didn't startle with the shrieking winds and battering rain and thudding of broken branches against the building. It dulled the panic she would have felt alone in a storage space where she was living illegally in a hurricane and nobody knew she was there. Water seeped up, turning the mattress into a giant sponge. Soon her back was wet. The crisscross of her racer-back tank top, the cotton shorts. The moisture soaked into the fabric, even above the surface of the water she lay in. Inch by inch, the line crept up her feet, her beautifully painted blue toenails, the sides of her arms and legs and torso. It saturated her hair, destroying the remains of the blowout she'd been trying to conserve. But now the water rose just above the mattress, soaking her hair, and it bloomed into springing curls all around her head. Still, she slept. It wasn't until the water seeped into her ears that her body moved at all beyond the rise and fall of her chest. Her shoulder flinched with the moisture tickling her ear canal, but it didn't wake her. First one side, then the other, as her head was slightly tilted on the mattress, no pillow. But then both ears filled and the tickle was gone. Her body stilled again in sleep. The now full canals dulled the howls of the storm. The flooding outside was anything but gentle, yet the water could only seep in through the slats in the metal door and the crack at the bottom above the cement floor, so the water level rose slowly. It crept up gently along her neck, her jawline, her cheekbone. The water sidled up tenderly like a lover. Dulce slept like a maiden awaiting a prince, awaiting a kiss. Yet she slept on when the water first touched her lips. Only when it began to drip into her mouth did she truly stir, the water pooling in the back of her throat and making it impossible to breathe properly now. The prince had come, the rescuer on his horse, the discoverer, the pimp. She flashed back as the water choked her. She recalled his hands around her throat, the bruising press of fingers against skin and muscle and tendon and windpipe. As the floodwater of the hurricane trickled delicately into her throat, her body recalled the searing pain of constricted breath, the scrabbling panic of asphyxiation. Her heart was hammering frantically as if it needed to escape her body to survive. Then the half blackout, feeling her body slump to the floor, wincing with the sharp press of his boot toe as he delivered a single kick to her hip. Her hip was soaked now in the floodwater, the left hip. Her pelvis was tilted slightly and her left side pointed down toward the sodden mattress. Her right side slightly raised, the hip bone jutting above the waterline like a disappearing island of brown skin as the water pooled between the tops of her thighs. More water trickled into her throat, and she coughed weakly, her gag reflex still kicking. And with the gagging, part of her brain began to register the fact that her life was in danger. Some fight or flight response activated her tongue, dragging it into action to spit some of the water out. Her life was in danger. Her body struggled to wake, but couldn't quite push through her half-sleeping stupor in which the unbidden memory bloomed in her mind like a nightmare, the time she'd been fool enough to go back to her pimp. And he'd thrown her against a wall, paint and plaster crashing into her back and shoulder like a drunk driver. When she staggered to her feet, he'd choked her. His thick fingers were more insistent than ever, despite her own hands gripping his wrists, digging her fingernails into his skin, trying in vain to open the vice of his oppositional thumbs, yet it was her own grip she could feel loosening as she began to lose consciousness. That had been Dulce's breaking point. The moment she decided to leave him for good, or rather, she passed out fearing she might die, but deciding to live if she found that she had a choice. That same resolve woke her inside the storage unit. She sputtered to life, coughing through a burning throat, in total darkness, completely soaked. Her body was sluggish and disoriented with the marijuana and the residuals of rum. She tried to lift her head, but her hair was unexpectedly weighed down with water. Slowly, through the chemical fog, she struggled to make sense of the bizarre combination of mattress and moisture, screaming winds and crashing thuds. Storage space? Hurricane? Flooding? Fuck! Thank you.